Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Her Voice, the show that brings you through all the different avenues of life from a female perspective. Today we're discussing something that most women will go through, and that's pregnancies and childbirth. So we've got with us today Sister Asmaa, a gynaecologist, Sister Zahra Al-Alawi and Sister Fatemah, who've both had children. And we're going to discuss the medical side and the experienced mothers who will discuss their own experiences, what they went through. So the first topic we'll discuss is miscarriages and early pregnancy and the risks. So Sister Asmaa, you've been a gynaecologist for quite a few years and you almost finished your training. Wonderful job. I mean, it's so important, especially for females. We prefer to see a female doctor. And you're specialising right now in two areas at the moment. Please.
Yeah, so just part of our training, our last 2 years we sort of subspecialise. So we're general obstetricians and gynaecologists, and then in the last 2 years I've concentrated on early pregnancy complications like miscarriages, ectopics, and because I love labour ward and delivery and things like that, so I'm concentrating on that as well. So
you love it, wonderful. So I mean birth. We all think it's the easiest. Most women can do it, they go through it, but actually there are quite a few complications. I mean, before the advent of modern medicine, a lot of women died in childbirth or in early birth. So, I mean, the development of the child in the beginning, the woman starts to change, she starts to get sick, she notices something's different. But then you've got those complications, for instance, ectopic pregnancy, which we don't hear much of. So please tell us, like, what is a woman to look out for? What are the risks? What are the signs?
So maybe first I'll say a bit about what an ectopic pregnancy is. So it's a term that a lot of people use. It just means a pregnancy that's grown outside of the womb, which is obviously where it should be. It's not very common. It happens in about, I think, 11 in 1,000 pregnancies. But the problem is it can be quite dangerous and it can be life-threatening. So a lot of women in their first 3 months of their pregnancy will be completely fine. They'll have no symptoms. But what we look out for as doctors is any woman that's got a bit of bleeding or pain. And so whenever that happens, we always recommend that women go to their GP, or if they're worried and it's out of hours, for example, they go to the A&E, because the ectopic pregnancy is what we need to rule out. So yeah, that's what we normally
And what's the pain going to be? Because you can have pain and not be.
Yeah, it's really difficult because what we normally say is specifically one-sided pain, sometimes pain in the shoulder tip. It's hard because some women don't have pain and they still have an ectopic pregnancy. It can be very non-specific as well. But any pain that you have, if it's a bit of a sort of ache or it's just uncomfortable, maybe that's something that we wouldn't worry about. But it's better to see someone and then they can assess whether it's something that should be taken further and you should be referred or not.
And say the baby is growing in the wrong place.
Yeah.
What happens next? What are the next steps?
So normally what would happen is you'd be referred to an early pregnancy unit if there's any suspicion that this pregnancy is worrying. And when you get seen, you'll have a whole history taken. They'll ask you lots of questions, look for risk factors that may suggest that you're more prone or more likely to have an ectopic pregnancy. And then what normally happens is you'll have an ultrasound scan. And quite early when it's early on, it's very difficult to see things through the tummy. So it will be an internal scan, and that is the best way. I know a lot of women get scared that it's harmful for the baby, but it's actually the most ideal way of seeing something that's probably only a few millimetres if it is growing. And so you'll have an ultrasound scan and we go from there. And sometimes we can see it then and we'll tell you and we'll diagnose it. Sometimes we can't.
But there's no way to bring the baby down.
No, if it's a pregnancy outside the womb, there's no way of it surviving, unfortunately.
Because it will die and the mother could potentially die as well.
So most pregnancies outside the womb are in the tube, the fallopian tubes, and they're so thin and friable that as the pregnancy grows, the tube is likely to what we could say rupture, and that can cause internal bleeding and can be very dangerous. And some women have died from it.
Yeah, and we've got another case. A lot of women will probably experience a miscarriage at some point in their their pregnancy or their planning for children. And it's quite a traumatic thing, isn't it? And sometimes it's multiple miscarriages. Why does that happen and what can you do to prevent it?
So miscarriages unfortunately are common, you're right. It's I think the latest research says it's every sort of 10 to 20% of pregnancies. But we don't talk about it enough, I think. the reasons it happened, there's lots of reasons. Most of them we have no explanation for. But if you think about how amazing the whole pregnancy process is and how we are created, there's lots of complicated steps along the way. And if the genetics have not worked out so well, you know, if it's not a pregnancy actually healthy or can survive, these are the ones that most likely will miscarry. So that's the main reason. But there are other reasons. So women that are more older are more likely to have miscarriages. Some health conditions, some medical conditions can cause miscarriages. Smokers, you know, women that have different shaped wombs, things like that. There's lots of different reasons. The main reason though, and it's unexplained, or there's a genetic reason.
So it doesn't mean it's your fault.
No, it's never the woman's fault. I mean, like I said, there is smoking as a risk factor. Sometimes for women that have had a miscarriage, but it's not something that we usually attribute.
Because I don't know if you guys have heard, like when you got pregnant, I was always quite paranoid. What will happen? Will I lose it? And you're always scared that something might happen, and you're reading about the horror stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some women have had like 11 miscarriages, all one after the other. So you're always careful not to carry heavy things. I mean, is that something you'd advise? Just take it easy, relax, or?
I would normally tell the women it's nothing that if there is a miscarriage that we're worried about happening, or the woman is bleeding or whatever, we normally say that it's nothing that they could do to prevent it, and it's nothing that they've done to cause it either. So I know a lot of sort of old wives' tales, they don't pick anything heavy, don't run for the bus, don't do anything. And that's not true. The last thing you want is a woman to be bedridden, because that can lead to other problems. And just lead a normal life. I wouldn't start running a marathon, but I would just do your normal sort of daily routine, and know that nothing that you can do is going to change, unfortunately, the course of whatever's going to happen.
I mean, I had a condition called Raynaud's syndrome, which means the blood clots more easily. So I was advised to have aspirin every day. I take it every day anyway, but especially in pregnancy. Before the advent of aspirin, they said that 70% of women with this, or 80% of women with this condition would miscarry, and it was multiple, and even stillbirths, which is quite devastating. So are you seeing this happening more often, that women have recurrent miscarriages, should be taking blood thinners or aspirin?
We do have a lot of women that have recurrent miscarriages, but again, that's for lots of different reasons, not just medical problems. Some women have different shaped wombs. There are other reasons, and what will normally happen is if you've had 3 miscarriages, you'll be referred to a specialist clinic where they will do lots of tests and see if they can find a reason, and then they'll advise you either to go on aspirin or blood thinning injections, or have a procedure that will help, hopefully in the future.
Now I'm going to discuss your own experiences, sisters. So, Sister Fatemah, you had a son 2.5 years ago. How's the first stages of pregnancy? How did you find it?
Yeah, I think because being my first child, you just you read about it and you speak to friends, and I have sisters who have had children, close friends, but it's not until you actually physically go through it. And so I think the nausea I found quite debilitating. And because you were told it's morning sickness, and you almost assume that you feel sick and you carry on with the day. But it's not like that at all.
All day, 24 hours.
Yeah, and those are kind of the maybe more simpler things that I wasn't anticipating, wasn't prepared for. More kind of relationship with your husband, and how you want your own space, you want to be left alone. Kind of
I've heard some women hate their husbands the whole time. Yeah.
I wasn't that bad, but I wasn't far off.
There's people that leave the house.
Get out. I can't stand your smell.
Yeah.
Because it makes them sick.
It makes them sick. I mean, I remember, like, I smelt so many things I've never smelt before when I was expecting, and I'm like, well, I can't have. Some of it was really nauseating. And with my experience, I hated meat. I couldn't eat
chicken.
All of it. It really put me off. I don't know what the science is behind that, or is it just a way to protect the mother or the baby from eating too many things that could cause damage? That's what I heard the theory was.
It might be. I've not heard anything. There's definitely a hormone change.
Yeah.
And you've got a heightened sense of smell in a lot of women, so that might be why you're more sensitive to things that otherwise wouldn't have bothered you in the past.
But I hate those women who are like jumping around.
Yeah, because that's the vision.
I'm so happy. My life is complete, and you're just like, I'm gonna throw up any second now.
Yeah.
How's your first trimester?
Are
you one of those women who's, floating dancing with the daisies?
I actually didn't get any symptoms.
Oh, mashallah. You needed one of them.
I honestly did not get any symptoms. I think in the first 3 months, I'm not saying I was like over the moon dancing. But
I think you were.
like even at work, I didn't tell no one even knew I was pregnant.
How did you know?
5 or 6. Oh, because I was planning both pregnancies.
Okay.
So I took a pregnancy test and knew. But the first child I did get slightly tired, so I was sleeping more in the first 3 months. But the second child, but no nausea or anything like that. A second child as well, no symptoms.
Because the first trimester is severe fatigue.
Yeah,
I mean,
you can get really tired. And
so that was the first child I got that. But the second child, when I was pregnant, the second child, I was running after I had no
first one. I
had
no choice.
no choice to like the first child. I would sleep a lot in the first 3 months because I had the opportunity. But the second child, I was running after a toddler. I didn't even have
you have no time to think about it.
Time to think about it. I didn't even feel like I was pregnant or even thought about pregnancy until I was probably 8 months, and then I thought, oh my God, I'm approaching my delivery, and then because the second child it flies by.
No, it happens. You force yourself. But my cousin, who's expecting anytime soon, she had severe morning sickness, like you heard about Princess Kate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was throwing up 15 times a day. She actually thought I had suicidal tendencies. It was that bad. She goes, I couldn't even see life anymore. It was so severe. And a lot of women are like, they think about ending the pregnancy. They're like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
How bad does it get, and why is it so severe?
Yeah, why do some people go through different experiences?
Cool.
Some women it does get really bad. So it's not many, it's sort of less than 1%, but a lot of women get what we call hyperemesis gravidarum. So that's when you have severe vomiting, where, like you said, women can't tolerate any food or drink, and it's not morning sickness. You're right, it's every time during it can be any time during the day. It's a diagnosis of exclusion. So I would tell any woman that is feeling very, very sick and who can't tolerate anything to actually see a doctor, because we need to make sure there's no other reason that they're feeling sick, because you're more prone to infections. There are other things that could be causing the nausea and vomiting. Sometimes just a tummy bug women may think, oh, it's just pregnancy, but it's important for us to check you out. But yeah, you're right. Some women need to come into hospital. And
what do you do? Are there medicines that they can take?
Yeah, so I know everyone's told not to take medicines in pregnancy, but some are actually safe. And we give you what we call anti-sickness tablets, and there are different ones that we can try. Sometimes it's a bit of a trial and error, but as long as you're being looked after, and we give you the ones that are working, you may need a combination of 1, 2, or even 3.
Would it harm the child or that throwing up?
No. In some ways, it's actually a good sign that you're throwing up that much, because it's related to the hormone levels. So if your hormone levels are really high, that's a good sign. It's probably not going to help the woman feel much better, but it's actually quite reassuring for us. It can also be related to twin pregnancies, so you'll always be recommended to have a scan. It can, in some women, would be related to an abnormal kind of pregnancy. So again, we would always recommend a scan quite early on. But the main treatment is anti-sickness tablets, lots of vitamins, because obviously you're not going to be taking as much food in. Yeah. So we'll give you either vitamin drip or
we've actually got some pregnant care if you can hand it to me.
This made it worse for me.
What?
Oh, really?
Pregnant care.
It worse?
Made the sickness worse.
Did it make you sick?
Oh,
okay.
Pregnant care was another story altogether, and I learned that I had to stop pregnant care. It got to that position, but then I started taking folic acid and vitamin D on its own, which is a walk in the park.
I mean, to be honest, it's got folic acid, which you definitely need, and that's to prevent
problems with the spinal cord. So we always recommend you take it actually before you get pregnant. So if anyone is trying, they should be taking it before.
So if you're planning, take it before. Yeah. Say it wasn't not planned, is that
then
the
take
risk?
it the minute you find out.
And take it anyway. So, I mean, you've got things like this in the shops. Is it a gimmick, or is it quite important to take?
It is very important to take vitamins during a pregnancy. Folic acid is the main one. Women, not just us that are covered up, but vitamin D in this country, we don't get much sunlight. So vitamin D is also really important. So now it's a big recommendation that women take. Multivitamins are fine, but they can make you a lot more sick. So when you do come in, if you do have quite extreme vomiting, we would normally stop that. Yeah. We'll either give you a drip or we'll give you just the individual vitamins that you need.
I mean, some of them had omega as well in that. Is that quite important, or do you think dietary would be enough?
I think you don't have to take it. I mean, if you have a good balanced diet, then you don't have to. I think multivitamins are always good because I think our diets are very different now than what they were before. So we're into eating a lot more processed food and things on the go. So we probably don't get as much vitamins and minerals that we need anyway. So I would always recommend a multivitamin anyway, but if it's making you sick, then folic acid and vitamin D are the main ones.
Also, I don't know, you guys, you probably read about the foods that you can't eat. I mean, there's quite like raw meat, sushi,
liver,
peanuts,
unpasteurized milk, soft cheeses.
What's the reason behind that?
So there's lots of reasons. Main reason is that you can get infections, things like toxoplasmosis, listeria, lots, and salmonella, obviously, and they can be quite harmful to your baby. So the NHS website has like a very up-to-date list of all the things that you can and can't have, because things like smoked salmon never used to be allowed, now that's added. So it does change regularly, so it's always worth updating yourself. And that's just really to prevent.
What about peanuts? I know did you get that?
No,
Like,
I was alright with
don't have
peanuts.
Is that because you might be allergic to it, or
No,
because your baby might develop
the
an
baby
allergy?
might develop an allergy.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think there's a lot of debate about even giving it to young children and whether that develops allergy. So I've not heard about peanuts, to be honest.
No,
papaya was an interesting one for me.
Papaya?
Yeah, the fruit papaya.
They wouldn't let you take it?
Yeah,
or?
I mean, it's on the list, the NHS
really?
list. I didn't know that, and it's quite... Yeah.
I've never heard of that, but
apparently
does it induce labour?
Yeah.
Oh, it's got something in it that.
I think it's got some kind of a.
But it's such a small amount. I mean,
it's like a meat tenderizer, isn't it? It's used as a meat tenderizer. So I can't remember. It mimics an enzyme or something.
Yeah, for birth.
And then what that does, it induces.
But we've got an anaesthetic we use in dentistry, and it's one of them. They say it mimics a hormone to trigger off labour. And they say don't use it. I think it's Cytonus, I can't remember. We don't really use it much. But it's such small evidence and it's such a small amount that you're just scaremongering. And it's not really the case.
Well, that's like with any drugs, unfortunately. You can't really do a trial and tell a pregnant woman, we're going to try this drug, we're not sure if it's safe. And so that's a problem. A lot of us, we don't know.
No one trials on
pregnant women.
Yeah.
So it's just the drugs that have been used for many years, and we've seen that there's been no adverse outcome that we can say.
You had, I think, was it 20 years ago, the anti-sickness drug.
Thalidomide.
That really affected a lot of babies, and I think that's why a lot of women are also scared. Because I know a lot of women are like, I'm not taking anything, particularly labour, which we'll get back onto. I'm not taking anything, I'm too scared, blah, blah, blah. Whereas I'm more open-minded. I'm like, actually, I'm not too worried, especially, paracetamol is fine. A lot of women are scared to take paracetamol because, it might be harmful. Caffeine, just before we go on to the break.
Yes.
Can you have caffeine? Because sometimes you really need a coffee.
You can, but there's a limit to how much you can have. I think it's 200 milligrams or something per day, or I think it's equivalent to 2 cups of coffee.
And what can happen if you do take more than that recommended amount?
Are you testing me? So I think there is a link with miscarriages. That's the main thing that I'm aware of. I'm sorry, I don't know anything.
No, that's fine.
But there's caffeine in chocolate as well, so that's the other thing. People think about
there's caffeine in lots of other things.
So you have to be careful.
Tea, coffee.
So I know we're going for a break, but something maybe to think about is stress as well.
Oh.
We talk about a lot of the chemical and physical factors, but there are some environmental factors. And I think working full time during the early stage, that really contributed to the way I was feeling. That I think maybe sometimes could be avoided.
Recommend
so stress is on something else
in the beginning, or taking it easy.
Like I said, I think just doing what you feel right. I think everyone's pregnancy is very different. Very different. Every mother feels different, and like one pregnancy will be very different to the second or the third one. So I think see how you go. I wouldn't ever recommend not doing anything, because when you're pregnant you're also prone to blood clots, so being stationary, not moving about is also very bad for you. So you want to lead a healthy lifestyle as much as you normally would. I think it is very individual, and if you're worried about anything, I think the best thing is to ask your GP, because what you don't want is to be off work for 9 months.
When there's even exercise.
Why not?
There's even exercise. You can do exercise while you're pregnant.
Yoga is a good one.
What we normally say is do what you normally do. Don't start something new while you're pregnant. That's probably not a good idea. But if you're a runner,
straight away.
if you're a runner or you swim, normally there'd be no reason why it would be harmful.
I think being active during pregnancy is really a positive
healthy
thing, and it can have a positive effect on labour as well. I truly believe through the studies that I've read. So
and it can keep your weight down as well. A lot of women, this whole eating for two is a myth.
Because the baby's about that big.
Yeah, exactly. And the baby's going to take what it needs.
0.2. Yeah, but in the beginning I lost quite a lot of weight. I don't know if you lost weight, because I just didn't want to eat much, and I felt miserable and quite depressed because I felt nauseous. But then the second trimester, you feel more active and energetic. And the third one, you just want to eat the whole... Like, I wanted burgers and fried chicken all the time. Well, not fried chicken, but like fried things and just rubbish. And I was like, this is really not good. And you think, oh, I'm pregnant, it's fine. But it's so not true. Don't just eat normally, healthily. And even though the cravings are there, or sweets and rubbish and stuff like that, subhanAllah, like what the body goes through. I remember making my husband get out in the middle of the night, like, actually, I want Haagen-Dazs chocolate ice cream, and it has to be the chocolate, and it has to be this one. And you have to go out.
In the next hour, otherwise I don't want
it. Or something terrible will happen to you, and you become very emotional. Like,
I think a lot of people don't talk about the emotional aspect of pregnancy and labour and after giving birth, and, you know...
But even in the first trimester, I'm not an emotional person, and I'd watch TV and a flower's blooming and I'd start crying.
No, it's true. That's something that you're just not prepared for.
Your hormones are all over the place.
When I was especially pregnant with the first child, everyone spoke about the physical aspect, the physical changes. No one spoke about the emotional, what happens after birth. And that's what I personally felt. And I did attend classes which was provided by the hospital and other classes. And I read so many books, Islamic books, you know, the mainstream books. But, you know, I think the focus was on the physical changes in the body and rather than the emotional and other aspects of it.
Yeah, and then it being more about the baby and less about you. Sometimes you feel like you're carrying a child, and you know, especially maybe in our community and the culture, is, you know, you're the protector, which is fine and absolutely something that you're very proud of. But I think sometimes, you know, that emotion, and you think about it and I think, oh, it's so silly. But when you're going through it, that emotional aspect is so big, especially when you are seen to be like a strong person. People don't give you that space.
But maybe you need that because once you have the child, you need to have that emotion because to be nurturing, to be loving, to be a good mother, you need that emotional side of you. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is preparing you for that. Subhanallah. And I think every stage of pregnancy will be a test. I mean, you've seen women, you probably through the worst of the worst. But at the end, do they get through it? And you know, most of the time,
yeah, most women will get through it.
They forget it almost sometimes.
I've heard that. I think it's a. Oh, do you mean just normal labour? I think we wouldn't carry on as a population if everyone remembered how painful labour was. Well, and that's for somebody who hasn't had a baby. But I think women are very strong. And they go through a lot, and just normal pregnancy, normal labour is tiring and exhausting from what I can tell, and daunting, let alone when things are complicated or maybe don't turn out how quite you require. But women are strong characters, and a lot of them will completely recover. But everyone is different.
Yeah. All right, girls, we're going to go on to the break. So thank you very much. And we'll see you after the break, where we'll start discussing the second trimester and labour. Thank you very much, Zahra. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Her Voice. So in the first topic we were discussing about the first trimester, what women are going through, the experiences of the ladies who've had babies, and we've got Sister Asmaa, who's a gynaecologist, discussing miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies, which are quite a big thing to go through in early pregnancy. So Sister Asmaa, how do we treat recurrent miscarriages or miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies? Because there's quite a few options, isn't there?
There is. For miscarriages, most women have had some sort of symptom that's brought them in, so we've diagnosed it. There are three options. Sometimes we don't do anything and we let nature take its course and see if the woman will miscarry herself and everything will be sort of complete. And in those cases, what we normally say is come back in 2 weeks' time, we'll rescan you, just make sure everything's okay, make sure that you're well. Obviously, through that time, if there are any problems, then she's very welcome to come back. The other option is a tablet that we can give. Or it's actually a few tablets, but it's sort of what we call medical management, and that will induce the miscarriage to happen. And most women will have that at home. Some women don't like the idea of obviously having to go through that. Some women will prefer that against waiting whenever, or having surgery, which is the third option. And surgery is usually a day case procedure. Obviously it has risks, as every surgery would. And some women prefer it because at least then it's finished and they can sort of move on. Some women don't want surgery at all. So there are three options, and most women it will hopefully be finished and over for them from a physical perspective at least, within a couple of weeks, if not a bit longer.
Can they go on to have healthy pregnancies soon after? I mean, how long would they have to wait?
So most women will have a completely normal pregnancy the next time around. Like we said, it's so common, unfortunately. And it's so rare that it will happen again from a genetic perspective. So most women will have a lovely normal pregnancy the next time around. We normally say you have to heal both physically as well as mentally. Okay, I mean, they've lost a child, no matter how far gone into that pregnancy it was, and there's a lot of healing that needs to happen. There are lots of associations out there. There's the Miscarriage Association. Your own hospital might have a support unit or a midwife who can help you through it. And I think that has to take priority as well. From a physical perspective, what we normally say is wait till your next period, because then at least we know this is finished, everything's fine, there's no complications, and then see what happens.
What's tragic is stillbirths, which can happen quite later on. What are the signs? I mean, they say now count the moves, so I'm sure you guys were counting. Did it kick today? Did it move?
So that's very different to a miscarriage. So stillbirths are obviously horrible, as with any loss of a child. The only thing that we can really tell you if your pregnancy has gone in completely normally is monitor your baby's movements. And yes, there are kick charts and things, and it's very difficult to know whether that actually helps, because some women, their baby moves loads throughout the day. Some women, it only does move 10 times a day. So if it's still 10, then it's very different to know if that's less or if that's normal. So what I normally tell the patients that I see is that if your baby's pattern of movement has changed, if it was normally always active in the morning and then it's no longer active, then you need to ask someone for help. Or if the number has changed and you've noticed it.
And what is it that causes stillbirths?
There's lots of reasons. Some are unexplained, some are reasons with the placenta, blood pressure problems, diabetes, there's infections, there's lots of reasons. And unfortunately, sometimes we have no warning sign and women will come in.
I've heard the cord wrapping around the neck as well. Is that something should we have more regular scans to check for that?
I mean, if you look at the evidence, lots of other countries will provide more scans than we do in this country, but we don't feel that there's any need to at the moment. If there's a reason that we're worried, so when you see your midwife, if you're not measuring correctly, or there's any other complications like a blood pressure or a diabetes issue or any other medical problems, you will normally have regular scans
Sleeping
to check.
on your back as well, is that one?
Well, sleeping on your back affects mum's blood flow because your baby is pressing on your big sort of veins and arteries. So most women will find it very uncomfortable anyway, so we'll sleep on their side.
There's one side you can't sleep on, isn't there?
Well, most people can't sleep on their tummy.
What is the side that it pushes on the vena cava?
Well, your back is the main thing.
Oh,
so we
back.
normally say rely on your left. Some women find it more comfortable on your right, as long as the blood flows.
Prop yourself up.
Pillow between your legs.
I had, I think, 6 pillows. I had the sausage one, and then 5 others. So I had my arm, leg, and
How big was your bed?
How big was I? I was huge. I mean, I don't know what. She came out that big. I'm like, where's the rest of her? I was so big, and I had people coming up to me like, twins. No, it's only one. I expanded a lot, and
a lot of women do, and there are medical reasons for that, and there's just pregnancy, and obviously because your blood flow is so much slower, you get especially during the last trimester, you do get very swollen as well.
Did you guys get swollen?
Towards the end, when I stopped working.
Yeah. I think it's naturally everyone does get swollen.
I remember doing sujood sometimes, and I couldn't do it.
Praying, let's talk about how you pray when you're pregnant.
Oh my God. I couldn't do sujood. It was so swollen.
That was a struggle.
When we talk about miscarriages and the safety of stillbirths, there are du'as specifically, tailored for the safety of the child and the mother during pregnancy. There's a du'a to prevent miscarriages. There's a du'a to prevent stillbirths. So we have all these du'as by the traditions of the Prophet and the Ahlulbayt, which are specifically tailored for each aspect or each difficulty during pregnancy.
And there's quite a few websites that will help you. I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes it's going to happen. I mean, you can't stop it, but don't feel guilty. Always have Allah on your mind.
Exactly.
I remember making dua. I know a lot of people make dua specifically just for the health of the baby or the beauty of the child or the intelligence of the child. But sometimes pray to Allah to make them the best of your followers, a mu'min child, which is because things will happen. The child may not be well, whatever happens, but
there's reasons why these things happen.
And you can get through that. I mean, do you guys watch One Born Every Minute? I was watching it all the time.
Yeah.
And there was one sad case where a child had a diaphragmatic hernia, which means that the diaphragm didn't develop and
there's a hole in it.
there's a hole in it.
Right.
And
I think I saw that one, yeah.
yeah. And the lady said she was pregnant. They're like, it's not going to survive. It won't. I mean, the lungs have not developed because the intestines are pushing into that area. So she said, I heard his heartbeat and I couldn't get rid of it. I wouldn't and I couldn't. And she said during her whole pregnancy, every time she walked into a child shop and she would cry, and she goes, I don't need any of these things. And then they showed the birth, so that she had a natural birth. They took the baby straight away on the... He was safe inside her. He was healthy inside. He was fine. He would live. But the moment he left, that's it. And he died after 5 days, I think. But it was such a beautiful story. I know, I'm going to get you started. But it was very emotional. But they said that he gave us strength. You know, this baby, like, it was a hardship, but they loved him so much, no matter what. And they went on to have another child. You know, it was a lovely story. But you're going to see things like this, and you're going to see hardship. Sometimes there's a problem with the child. My manager had, during her first scan, kidney missing, hole in the heart for her baby. But you know what? She was born. She's a healthy child now. You know, and sometimes there's a human behind that. It's not just a body. It's not just health-wise. So always make dua for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you a mu'min child or a good child who will do good in the world. Doesn't matter if they're healthy or unhealthy. We don't want an unhealthy child, obviously. But it's not always the end of the world, I suppose. But it's tough. You're emotional. You're going through that, and you probably
one of the hardest things I think anyone can go through. I think having a community or someone to talk about. I think sometimes what I worry about is that we don't talk enough about things that don't go right. I know it's very hard for individuals who do miscarry or have ectopics, but the difficulty that I have sometimes is I see someone who's going through and I think they're the only person that's ever had a miscarriage because they've never heard of their friends or their family or the community. No one ever talks about it. And I think that's where I think for me things have to change.
These topics need to be discussed so people know they're not alone and there's a support.
So you find out about the du'as that you need to do, and I think we need to talk about, because it is so common. We need to talk about it. It is a part of our life, you know. It's not because they've done anything wrong. It's that shame that you mentioned. And that's, I think, that not only have you lost a child, no matter how far gone in your pregnancy, but then you're given this shame that you don't deserve.
It's amazing because the minute you find out you're pregnant, you have this strong attachment to the child, emotionally, physically, and you
start living their life.
And you start planning and anticipating this child, and then when it's taken away, I can only imagine, you know, how a woman feels when she discovers that she's lost a child. But and I think that was our worst nightmare. Like, I remember when I was going to the scans, I just wanted to just hear the heartbeat. My worst nightmare with them saying there's no heartbeat or we can't.
I had a few
and
of
that's
those.
happened. That's happened to a few women where they just can't detect their heartbeat, and that was probably the worst nightmare for every woman. But some women do go through it, and it should be spoken about so that they know they're not alone.
There should be support and things like that. Especially.
I think on that point, it's important also when you're going through it and things are going out, just being conscious of people who don't have the same experience, or I know some, you know, just be with other pregnant, or not all pregnancies lead to successful. You know, births or, you know, things go wrong. I think sometimes also just to be conscious of that as well. Sometimes we forget that not, you know, it could be the case that...
But pregnancy actually is it's like there's a parasite growing, there's so much going on with it. It's almost like that.
Happen?
So much happening to your body. So much can go wrong, but subhanAllah, you're creating something so complex. I think humans we are the most complex of all creatures, and development takes so much longer. Our brains, and you know, sometimes you read about just small changes that can have an adverse effect, but at the same time they still don't know how birth occurs. It's such a miracle, because why doesn't the body reject the sperm, for instance? It's a miracle.
It's amazing.
So all that, you know, and all the children that are born, the majority of the cases it's healthy, especially this day and age in modern medicine. So alhamdulillah, it's something we should be grateful for. It is a miracle and it's exciting, but at the same time also be careful and look after yourself and eat well, eat healthily, and that's really important.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's on that point, if something isn't going per norm, just not to panic and go through it, because you assume that you're going to go through what you read and it's going to be in that sequential order, but it's not. So when you were saying about your scan, I was 4 weeks. I would have been due in 4 weeks, and I went for a scan and they couldn't find the heartbeat on 2 occasions on the same day. And it's just, my world was, I mean, I just thinking about it makes me so emotional, because it just,
so what happened?
The thought of it, he was breech. So my
right.
midwife was looking at the wrong place for the heartbeat, and she couldn't find
They're
the
trying
heart.
to listen in with the
And then she
device.
wouldn't scan it because for whatever reason, I can't remember the details, but then I
that
had
must
to
have
go
been
in that
horrific,
evening,
yeah.
and we couldn't find a
worst
heartbeat.
nightmare.
And I was like, "There's, I
Was
know
he
there's
moving,
movement.
though?
I could feel the movement, but something wasn't right because it was
Yeah.
breech and it was so far gone."
Oh, that's so sad.
So it wasn't until I stayed, just being really, really adamant that you guys need to check this out properly. You can't leave me saying there's no heartbeat for 2 days. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's very
Just being
frightening.
focused and not, things don't follow a certain order,
Exactly, yeah.
follow your instincts. Although being a first-time mother, you still think, no, I'm
No, you need to
confident,
do
you need to look
something
into
about
this. And we found out it was breech. So
Alhamdulillah,
just to
so
say,
healthy baby.
yeah, healthy baby.
What we're going to do is now discuss labour and delivery.
Yeah.
So this is something you do on a regular basis. It's not the most pleasant thing. Screaming woman, she's probably cursing you, and scared
Been
as
kicked
well.
a few
Yeah. Labour is a big thing. It's a big
is.
trauma to the body.
Yes.
And what's the first stage? I mean, what triggers it off?
So your body is naturally going to prepare itself. So there's different stages of labour. There's first, second, and third stage. So the first stage is you're obviously got loads of things. So not only is it hormone changes that trigger labour, but the baby's head will be engaged. It'll be pressing on the cervix, and you'll have your cervix dilate and release the hormones as well. Sometimes your waters break. So there's lots of things that can trigger labour. Sometimes infections. There's lots of things. But the first stage is what women are usually talking about when they've been in labour for days, and there's what we call a passive and an active phase. So there's the contractions that come very slowly initially, and they sort of get you ready.
You mean the painful and the more painful?
Yes,
phase.
pretty much. And then when you're in active labour, it's when the contractions come at least 3 to 4 times every 10 minutes, and you'll be pretty much you'll be good dilation by then. So there's lots of things that the way we sort of describe labour.
And what if your waters don't break? What do you do?
Not many women, some women don't, their waters don't break. So when they are in labour, the midwife or the doctor will break them for them to help the labour progress, or they'll break right at the end when the baby's being born.
And delivery. Now
Yes.
there's many ways to deliver a
There
child.
is.
I want the most painless and easiest and the least traumatizing way. That's me. I don't do pain. And I remember I went into labour and I'm like, the first thing I said, gas in her first. And they're like, yeah, but you just started. You just started. What's wrong with you? Wait. Like, no, not waiting. And I was on it for like 12 hours like that. And it made me feel quite good. I know it makes some people feel sick. And I kept saying, okay, when can I have my epidural? When can I have my... Like, you haven't even dilated. But I know I don't want to get to that point. And I was so scared of the pain. And I just don't do pain. But whereas Sister Zahra, I don't know, you had a C-section.
I had a C-section.
Yeah, but you definitely didn't want pain relief,
No,
did you?
I don't.
Oh, that's amazing, Zahra. Tell us all about
With
it.
the daisies and...
Carry on.
I've always wanted an active birth. I didn't want any, even when I'm pregnant, I don't like paracetamol, I don't take tablets. So I really wanted an active birth. But like you said, it's unpredictable. I went when I went into delivering my children, I thought, whatever happens, if there's complications and I do need an epidural or a C-section, it's not going to put me off, or I'm not going to feel like a failure for doing that. But I really wanted an active birth, and I just wanted to walk around and be active during labour. So I didn't want an epidural. The place where I gave birth, there's no doctors, there's no epidural, it's a birth centre. So there is no doctors around anyway, and there's no epidural. So if I did need that, I had to go somewhere else. But anyway, the gas in there, I don't know why women take gas in it.
You didn't even take gas in her.
No, not even
feel
gas in
sick.
her. The first child, I took a puff and it knocks you out. And I felt very engaged. I felt very focused. When I took one puff of gas in it knocked me out, and I said I didn't even know what was going on. So I remember going down. I said, no, just take that away. And then I never took gas in it, even the second child. But I'm an advocate of active labour and being active and not taking any form of medication. But if someone needs to take that for medical reasons,
At any point, did you not think, I regret my choice?
No.
I want.
Mashallah.
No.
I don't know how she does that.
Yeah, but there's also stuff that helps. Like there's going back to the da'as and stuff. I know while someone's in labour, they're not even thinking about da'as, anything like that. What I done is before even going into birth, I wrote all the da'as down and I pinned it. I sewed it in a material and I pinned it to my jumper.
Beautiful.
So it was that, and also told my husband to read some recommended surahs from the Quran.
Like Surah Maryam,
Yeah.
which my sister read.
And there's da'as
well,
which help with labour. So also, as you know, in the birth centre, they really do push with having a home atmosphere. So it also, like, I bought or on our phone, we played some da'as and stuff just to like calm the situation down. And I truly believe, I know people may not agree, but I truly believe if a woman's calm, I think it will, because at one point I did, because the pain gets too much and I did tense up and that just made the pain so much worse. I think if a woman is calm and her muscles are, how can I say, not tensed up, I think it makes labour easier. So
But even
I
Maryam alayhi salam in the Quran, she said, I can't quote it exactly, but she felt like she wanted to die. It was so painful.
It is painful. So I don't want to give the image, by the way, that labour is not painful. It is painful. It's probably the most painful thing I've experienced in my whole life.
Oh my.
It is painful, but at the same time, I think if I had gas in it, it would have been less.
I don't know. I find this subhanAllah, I think sometimes women actually choose. We have medicines. They choose to feel the pain.
It's beautiful.
They've achieved something.
Yeah, see? Yeah. I feel like I missed out. I always felt like I missed out.
She told me
I
that.
always told to Zahra and she explains, I was like, I didn't experience that. And I was so looking forward to it.
I don't feel like I missed out.
No, I really do.
But you had some contractions, though.
I had some, but they were very mild. And
but they were bad enough.
Yeah, but because she wasn't, her heartbeat kept dropping. No, they were like, because I had the gas in there, so it felt better, and I took cocodamol and things like that. So, because I have a phobia of pain. And then when they did the C-section, it was really it was quite easygoing, relaxed. I didn't feel stressed. And I knew I just don't want to feel that. But like my sister, she said she bit her husband's hand continuously because she was in so much pain. And I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to bite anyone's hand. I want to but I understand it's a rite of passage. We go through that. But for me, I knew there was epidural and I was happy to take it. And I did, but they did the C-section. It was the aftermath was really painful.
Yeah, I was going to say, does it justify the aftermath?
Yeah, but it was really not nice. But would I do a C-section again? Probably planned, because I've got fear, and I'm sure other women have fear of giving birth naturally.
Yeah. Do you think people have fear because we have portrayed it to be as if it's a very traumatizing experience, and that's why a lot of people fear it before they've even experienced it? Like a lot of pregnant women say, I'm just fearing that. I think because people kind of portray it to be like that. Like I remember when I gave birth, this old woman was telling me she gave back in our countries where there was no form of epidural or anything, and she was telling me, she's like, but your body's been designed to go through this. Like women have given birth. She was just the way she was portraying it to me. She said, I know a woman. She's very old. She's in her 70s. So she's like, I know a woman that was just cleaning the house and she just gave birth. But I know that's unrealistic for us.
Tsunami. Do you remember the lady who went on the tree and gave birth on her own?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's desperate times, I think. You have no option there.
Like what Zahra was saying, we've got the ability.
Yeah, Allah has designed our bodies to go through this. So even when a woman gives birth, her body just physically pushes the baby out. Even she knows when to push the baby out. So when people explained it like that, but then I went online and I googled online. I heard all these traumatizing stories, and then that scared me even more.
But it is one of the most dangerous things. It's one of the most dangerous things to do as a woman, especially in third world countries where a lot of women die in childbirth. And because as a gynaecologist, you've seen the worst, so I'm sure you've got fears as well.
I think, like you said, we are designed to have babies. But we've also created the epidural if you need it. It's been created for a reason.
The epidural is painful on its own.
Can I ask a question? This is something which really affected, like, would never make me have an epidural. People say there's side effects to epidurals, and if they inject it in the wrong way, then it could paralyze you. And then there's, even if they don't inject it in the wrong way, they say it could affect the child or the body. And that's something that would completely put me off. I would say, you know, if I don't need it, why would I put myself at risk?
So I think
affect the child as well.
It can. Well, so I think with anything there are risks and benefits. I mean, we are interfering at the end of the day. The only thing that doesn't have a risk is don't have a baby, and you know, even a normal natural
could happen,
has risks and benefits to it. I think with an epidural, I'm not an anaesthetist, but with long-term nerve damage, the risks are very, very small. I think it's something like 1 in 25,000, and or if not even lower. And I think that's just minimal nerve damage. Things like paralysis are even rarer. The risks with an epidural, you get a bit of itching. It can drop your blood pressure if they've not prepared you for whatever reason, and that can affect the blood supply to baby, but it's something very short, and we have ways of rectifying that. There's this theory that an epidural will make you have a cesarean. It's more like
that's what I heard.
There's no evidence.
But the woman doesn't know when to push the baby out because she can't feel it.
So what that does is it means that you might have a longer, what we call second stage when you're pushing. So it might be longer, because most women that have an epidural, what we do is we let them have that an extra hour when they've become fully dilated. So we try and give them the most optimal way of trying to push a baby out. And so it's a bit longer.
So that scares me more than natural.
But then you won't have pain with that. So there are benefits from this, and everyone is very different. So there is an increased risk. I won't lie. Cesarean, no, but there is an increased risk that we might have to help the baby come out. So with forceps or a
We will go into that after the break, because we want to talk about deliveries. Yes. Thank you very much, and we'll see you after the break, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Her Voice. So in this session we're talking about pregnancy, childbirth. So we've come to the point where we're talking about labour, and now we're going to move on to assisted delivery, because not every woman can actually successfully deliver by herself. So I mean, you get various complications, and a lot of women are scared about assisted delivery. Could you inform us a bit more?
Yeah, of course. The only time you'll probably ever meet someone like me when you're having a baby is if something has not quite gone according to plan. So most women, or the midwives, will deliver them, even if you have an epidural or whatever's happened throughout the process. Assisted delivery, there's two types, basically forceps and what we call a ventouse delivery, or a cup delivery, and there are different types of cups that we use. And the reason we might have to use them is if you've been pushing for a very long time, and you'll be tired, baby will be tired, and we don't like women to be pushing, especially at the end of their labour, for a long time, because that can lead to complications. Or if there's a worry with baby. So most women are being monitored either on a monitoring machine, or their midwife is listening into the baby's heartbeat regularly. And if there's any concern with that, and that we're worried that baby's getting distressed, then we need to speed up the process, and we would offer obviously to help you. It's completely, you consent. You don't have to have it done, but it's normally something we would recommend. And that's when we get called in. And depending on the way the baby is and the position that baby is in, because sometimes that's the reason that babies are difficult to push out, because they're in a funny position or they're lying difficultly. We will make an assessment and talk to the mother about it and say, look, this is what's happened. We would recommend either a forceps or a cup, and we'll go from there, really. And if the mum's happy, then if she's got enough pain relief and if we're not that worried about baby, we can usually do it in the delivery room.
Is it harmful?
So there are risks with it, like, again, with everything. So from a baby perspective, with forceps, babies can sometimes get marks on their face. Most of the time it will go within a few hours, if not a few days. There are more serious risks involved, but they're very, very rare. Sometimes babies' nerves on the face can slightly be damaged just because of the pressure of the forceps. And there are obviously more serious risks, but the more experienced the operator, especially now in this country, are all very well trained. These risks are very uncommon. With regards to the cup, babies can get swelling and bruising underneath where the cup was. Most of the time, the actual bump on the head will go down in a few hours. But if there's a bleed or anything, that can take a few days, and sometimes babies will need to go to the special care.
So what does the cup do? You pull it out with the...
So I never like to use the word pull because it just all sounds horrible. With babies, especially if they're in the wrong position, you have to try and encourage them to turn into the right position because we're made for babies to come out a certain way. And so you're encouraging a baby to come into that perfect position. And so the cup helps baby turn to do that while the mum is pushing, and you can help baby come out. Forceps, it's the same kind of technique. We're not really changing the position, but you're helping baby come out. There is some element of force, obviously, because of the way we do it. But with a trained operator, it shouldn't be above a certain amount.
And what about cutting the woman to allow the baby to come out? Some places, I know some countries, it's very common to help. But is that something you do commonly?
I wouldn't say commonly. It can be with an assisted delivery or even with a normal delivery that some women will need a cut to help the baby come because of either there is no room and the midwife can see that there's no room, or that they can see that actually she's already tearing and it will prevent a more serious tear that might lead to more further problems down the line for that mother. And then that would be when we recommend it. When we're doing a forceps delivery, most of the time we would also recommend it just to allow room. Not with every cup delivery. It really depends on the situation, and you'll have that conversation with your doctor.
Do you have to provide consent?
Of course. So sometimes in the heat of the moment, when if your baby's heartbeat is dropped and we're very worried, we'll be saying, look, I might have to do this. Is that okay?
Okay.
It's not a big consent form, but it would be something in an emergency. It's very difficult, but you will always get verbal consent.
Yeah. I think most mothers wouldn't really care if it's to save their child.
Yeah, most women will just get on with it and stop talking to me. So, and obviously we make sure the pain relief is adequate. We would never do it without pain relief.
And you've got tearing as well, don't you? You've got 3 degrees of tearing.
4 actually.
4.
So I don't know if you want me to go into detail. So there are different types of tears, and again, women can have it with assisted delivery or even a natural delivery. And the most important thing is that we recognise it and we repair it properly for that woman.
But it recovers.
Oh yeah, most will recover. Even the horrible tears, like the 3rd and the 4th, most women will recover. It may take a bit longer, so sometimes 6 weeks.
But would they probably go for a C-section next time?
If a woman has had a 3rd degree tear in the past, and if it's left her with maybe complications or a longer recovery, she'll have that discussion in her next pregnancy, and we'll offer it. We'll say, look, if
they do offer it.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought they.
If it's been a horrible tear and there are definitely complications, I think it's unfair not to, and it'll be a conversation that you have because again, the cesarean isn't straightforward either, and there are risks to that.
Me and Fatemah had C-sections for our daughters, your son and my daughter, and it was quite straightforward. But
yours was an emergency one, wasn't it? And yours was an elective.
Mine was planned, but only in the last week or so.
But you came in and it was nice and sort of
it was
calm
okay.
and sedate.
I have to say, I do feel like I said it earlier, although it was planned and there was a time allocated, I knew exactly what was going on. I didn't feel like I went through delivery. And this might not be the same for a lot of others, but even my husband got to hold my son first, and I just felt left out. And I wasn't even strong enough to be able to.
Yeah, you feel really awful.
It was just
You're so numb afterwards.
Yeah.
But I mean, generally now it's quite safe. It's quite straightforward.
Yeah.
But are there major risks with C-section?
I would say so. So I'm one of these doctors that I think always natural is best, but there are definitely reasons that you should have a cesarean section. The main risks are with any operation, bleeding and infection. And you, as a mother that's carried a baby, have got a very big blood supply that is at risk of bleeding. And once the baby's out, infection with every operation.
More so aftercare? What about?
Well, aftercare, I think with the actual operation, I think the problem is...
Oh, infection, I meant, sorry.
Infection, it can be internal, not just in the wound. But yes, aftercare is very important, especially with the wound itself. The main issue with a cesarean is injuring other organs where we operate. Now, the risk is only about 1%, if not less, but it can happen. And everyone thinks, I won't be that 1%, but it does happen. And I would always, if it's an emergency, we'd always, the risks definitely outweigh the benefits. A lot of women are, however, sort of going, I want a section for no reason. And that's what we find difficult because... Yes, you say it's very common, you can't justify it. And if anything were to go wrong, then you'll be saying, well, did we do the right thing?
A lot of celebrities go through C-sections by choice because it's neat and tidy.
I think they worry about the pelvic floor and the risk of tears if they have a normal delivery. There is this myth that your pelvic floor muscles are only damaged if you have a normal delivery, and that's not true. With the evidence suggests that just having a baby puts pressure on those muscles. So I think everyone is very different, and every pregnancy is very different. And I think it is a conversation with you and the people that are looking after you. We would never force you to have anything, even a normal delivery. If you are adamant you don't want a normal delivery, we can't force you to have one.
Yeah.
But would they offer you a C-section if there's no complications and no reason to have a C-section?
We never offer it.
I mean, if someone requests it, would you grant it?
So after lots of conversations, and if we need to see why the woman doesn't want it. A lot of women are scared of childbirth and really scared, and some women actually need psychological help with that, and we offer that treatment for them if they're happy. At the moment, most hospitals will say it needs to be a consultant decision if we're doing a cesarean for no reason other than it's the mother's wish to have it.
Now, we've discussed the labour, but there's something that, for me, I didn't get enough information about. I thought you have the baby and that's it. It's easy. Like, a few late nights, but actually one of the most natural things you think is natural is breastfeeding. And it's actually quite difficult for a lot of mothers. And I don't know if you guys experienced it, but some babies can't actually latch on. Sometimes you feel like a failure. You know, I remember by the second day I asked for a bottle, and they made me feel really guilty, the midwives. Why? I said, I can't feed my daughter. I can't. She's not feeding. She's crying. She was crying all night. They're like, we'll try. And they try and train you, but it was such a traumatizing thing. I'm like, well, I'm meant to do this. This is my role, and I can't. And you feel so guilty.
Absolutely.
And I would start reading, because I never read about it before. I'm like, I didn't even have bottles with me or anything. So they begrudgingly gave me some formula. And she drank. And the thing is, if you start them on formula or milk, they'll get used to it and they won't train themselves. And it's quite a difficult thing, and it's painful to breastfeed as well, because at the same time your muscles start contracting. It's like almost labour pain. And then you feel miserable, you're sore, you're tired. People get infections. I've heard stories of severe infection of the glands, and the pain is debilitating. I mean, what advice would you give? I know that it's not your speciality, but there are quite a few things that women can do to prepare, are there, or it's just one of those things?
Well, your midwives are usually the best people to ask about breastfeeding, and they do hold most hospitals will have classes prenatally.
But they never told you. They always told you should.
Yeah.
They never
Now
said,
more so than ever,
actually, some women can't and they struggle.
I think breast is always best. Breastfeeding has got so many benefits to both mum and baby that we always do recommend it, at least trying. And yes, in the beginning people think, well, there's nothing coming, and it's what we call colostrum initially, so even that has benefits. Some women will need to top up, and some women don't want to breastfeed and will not want to breastfeed. I think the worst thing is you can making someone feel guilty about it. I think it's your choice. You know, you do whatever you feel is best and most natural to you.
I definitely agree, like breast milk is made for the baby specifically.
But if you can't and you're finding it difficult, I think the worst thing they can do is make you feel guilty about it. I would definitely read up. I would go to the classes. I think if you're struggling, the sooner you ask, the better. And don't take no for an answer. Ask, like you said, you were mentioning breast pumps, things that can help you stimulate.
Can we just grab this one now? I think they're really important because there's several factors. Like when you're breastfeeding, you are stuck to the child all day, every day, and that sometimes carries on for 6 months. You need a break sometimes, but you can't because they're feeding on the go. So some mothers, what they did, they would have breast pumps. Now this is probably the best on the market. Very powerful, and hospitals use them as well. And what you could do is express milk and leave it in the fridge or warm it up for the baby to have. So if you need to go out, have a break, you know, because mums need breaks. I really believe in that. You need to take time out, because if you get stuck with the child 24/7, and especially we work, we go out, you become quite, like, I'm sure it affects your a bit of depression. So what some mothers did, they would give them just breast milk and give them in a bottle. There are now bottles designed to behave more like the woman's breast, but it's something that gives you time out, and especially if you can't breastfeed, it's a great way to give your baby the breast milk.
Yeah.
So you can still use bottles, but you get the milk that is designed for the child. It's not going to be as efficient as a child suckling, because that's what nature's all about. The child has powerful cheeks, and it usually knows how to do it. Some children can't, but this one I definitely recommend for mothers. That was my biggest struggle probably after I had. Did you guys have any struggles with
Zahra first, because she's got the best situation.
No, you know what? I'm still breastfeeding my child now.
Yeah.
He's going to be 2.
Mashallah.
And but were there struggles like at night? Was the baby crying, colicky, like when they just constantly cry for no reason, and you think, what is this? And you start to worry.
No, my child wasn't colicky. No, the only thing is
later.
She sewed all those arts onto her thing, yeah.
No, but I did get pregnant. So after 1 year,
after.
and after I got pregnant straight after. So I was 5 months pregnant and still breastfeeding.
Oh, wow.
The other one, so that did affect my, and I was working full time, so it did affect my strength, and I felt very weak. And my mom kept telling me, stop breastfeeding because you're pregnant now, and I continued breastfeeding the first child, and I was until I got to 5 months pregnant with the second one, and the second one was approaching 2, so I stopped.
That doesn't affect the baby, does it? Breastfeeding while you're pregnant?
No, I don't think
Apparently it does, but I did feel physically weak, and because I had such a especially during Ramadan and Muharram, it was intense work at the channel, so I couldn't. But the only struggle, my child's turning 2 and I can't stop breastfeeding. That's the only struggle now. They get so attached, really and when you talk about bottles and having a break, my children wouldn't take a bottle.
Yeah,
so I tried so hard, because I was obviously working, and I did return back to work. Straight after giving birth, I returned back to work, but they just wouldn't take a bottle. So that did put me in a position where I couldn't leave them for a long period of time, because that was the only issue I had. I tried different bottles, I tried even the ones that were designed, but nothing worked, and the same with the second child. So that's probably the biggest struggle, struggle that I faced.
I was very similar to Esraa, that I had challenges with latching, and I don't think he held he had a lot of vomiting. For some reason, so that's why we had to lots of reflux, but extreme reflux. We had to give him a coenzyme. I can't remember what it's called. It's a new product that helps break down the milk.
Choline.
Yeah, choline.
Yeah, it breaks down if they're lactose.
Yeah, it's generally when they can't absorb or take the nutrients out of the milk. But it's a really complicated process, because you need to add it to the milk like half an hour earlier. It was really complicated.
It was you go through so many products. Don't be
no, not to put you off.
Don't be put off, because babies are they're gonna go through pain. They cry a lot. Then it's a strange environment. It's uncomfortable. Another big thing is bathing them. Now they're slippery, they're small, and they're and you want to wash them obviously in the beginning, and they have these plastic tubs that are just ridiculous, because you're gonna hold it, and they're so slippery. Now. If we bring this bath in.
I actually saw this now, and I said, why didn't anyone tell me about this?
So this one, it's by Angel Care. The one I had was material. Okay. So I used to sit her in, and she'd sit so comfortable because it's material, and you wash the baby.
That's such a good idea.
I used to wash her in the sink because it's so easy and she's so small. One thing is it does mold up, and if they've done things get stuck in. But this one's plastic, and it's soft, and I haven't tried it on a child yet. This is for my cousin, but it's softer, and you can wash it and clean it really well.
Good idea.
So they sit down, and you pop them in. And then you don't have to worry about holding them on for so long. But the other ones have clips, like you can strap them on, which is quite good. And it's such a scary moment, because if you hold a baby, they're just so delicate and they're so small, and you're like, I'm going to drop it, I'm going to drop it, I'm going to drop it.
I used to always think that.
Yeah, so...
I used to hold them with one hand and pour it with the other, and it was so difficult.
Yeah, so these kind of baths, I really recommend them for mums. And I see a lot of mums, they've just got a tub and a jug, and they're like, I'm holding him, who's going to help me? And no, these are fantastic. You can use both hands to wash the child and things like that. That's one thing I would definitely recommend for mums, especially in the first few weeks. But, at the end of the day, post-labour, what do you do? Do you still walk around? Do you take it easy? What do you do about pain? Things like that.
Depending on what kind of delivery you've had, you'll probably be discharged from hospital with some pain, sort of pain relief, especially even if you've had a normal delivery, you might need something with those afterbirth pains that you were talking about, the cramping, because that's just your body going back to normal, but it will feel like labour. So things like Cadidramol, sometimes you give ibuprofen because obviously it's safe postnatally. I think if you are a woman that's had a cesarean or any complication, sometimes you're given blood thinning injections as well. That's very important to take because, like I said, you're more prone to getting blood clots in your legs or your lungs when you're pregnant, and if there are other complications, that increases that risk. I would take it easy in as much as you have to. I wouldn't, like I said, I would never recommend anyone be bedridden. But your body will tell you how much you can do. With regards to cesarean, there are a few things that we normally recommend. So you can't drive for usually about 6 weeks because of the emergency brake. And your insurance won't cover you, so it's more of an insurance issue. But things like eat healthily, breastfeed, and if there are any problems, just
ask for
seek
help.
Yeah, exactly. I think that a lot of them don't, and we get like infections, especially much later down the line, because they've been too embarrassed or think it's normal. And again, it's that thing about communicating, talking to each other. I'm sure you'll have friends that are mums, and your own mother, and the midwives should be coming to visit you, if not the health visitor, and just ask. There's no harm in asking.
I needed so much help. I
think
wanted to sleep, and I remember a few times she'd wake up in the middle of the night, and I was so exhausted, especially after having a C-section. And I just remember asking my parents, I said, "Can you take her for a few nights?" Because we lived in a flat next to my parents. And then because she was bottle fed, that was really easy. That's one good thing about the bottle feeding. So they would take her through the nights, and to have that help there, someone cooking for you, someone looking after you. What I love about the Indian culture is when a woman gives birth, 40 days she does nothing, no cleaning, no time. The whole family have to look after. They give her massages.
No way.
It's really nice, and
like it.
they all she does is breastfeed the child. That's it. Nothing else. She doesn't have to cook, and I think that's lovely. I think every woman should have that in their life. All right, so we're gonna wrap up. Thank you so much. It has been an amazing session, and I think it's really important for our women viewers
Can I
to
just say one thing?
Yeah,
just
go on.
Yeah. I know I spoke very positively about pregnancy, but I think every woman goes through difficulties. I went through difficulties as well. I'm not trying to make it sound very easy. The reason why I say the positive aspect of my pregnancy and childbirth is because some people do have, I don't want to scare people.
No, it's good because there are always women who are going to have had it, textbook. Yeah. And it's good to have that comparison.
Yeah, because you hear the worst things,
because for me,
but every labour is painful. Every pregnancy is difficult.
Of course. Also, you had that in your mind. You want to go through it, and in my mind, I'm the opposite. I don't want to go through it. So I wouldn't. This is how you coped with it, and that's strength of mind, I suppose.
And it shows the diversity of every pregnancy. Yeah.
So don't think I should be like her, or I should be like her, or I should be. You're gonna be how you're gonna be.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
just be prepared.
Just be prepared. And it's nice talking about it, and discussing the differences. And every human is different. Every child is different. Even when you have the baby, some will sleep the night, and some won't. So there's no formula for it.
True.
That's it.
Yeah.
So alhamdulillah, we all make dua for Allah, to guide us and to bless us with maybe ease, and if in hardship we learn to find the ease and be patient. But fantastic session. Thank you, Sister Asmaa, Sister Zahra, and Sister Fatemah.
Just to also say it's the best experience ever. Seeing your child just makes it all worthwhile. So going through the hardship, but it's the end product.
SubhanAllah. Inna ma'al usri yusra. It's always something there, and we've got toddlers now, they're running around. Actually, that's the crazy stage. So enjoy the baby stage because they're nice and calm then. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.